I used to ask a lot of questions about DeMarvin Leal. I asked one of Mike Tomlin last summer that almost seemed to take him aback because somebody actually asked a question about Leal. I don't really do it anymore. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. Comes your way bright and early every weekday morning. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Leal's 23 years old, so he's not done. He's not going to get discarded, at least not before training camp. But I'll be honest, I don't know that he's going to make it through to the other side of that camp. And I'll go further and say that he won't if he performs as he did in what should have been a pivotal year two for him. For anyone who doesn't even know who I'm talking about, and I would imagine that's at least some percentage of the audience here, Leal was a third-round pick in 2022 and was seen, rightly so, as a guy who might outperform that draft spot. He was seen as one of those guys you ask, wow, how did he fall like that? But since then, over those 2 years, he's appeared in 25 games, meaning he's gotten a helmet for those. He started in a total of 6. He's got fewer than 30 tackles and really no statistics that are significant. And this despite what was probably one of the more welcoming settings for a defensive line across the whole NFL, with the injuries to Cam Hayward and others and lack of performance, and didn't matter. He just really didn't get there. The only positive, in fact, that I can cite goes back to his rookie year when Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin, and the staff decided to deploy him in almost a gimmicky fashion against the Ravens in a game down in Baltimore. He and Mark Robinson were spying on the Baltimore backfield, and they did that effectively. You got to see some of Leal's athleticism, some of his raw traits, and then 2023 came around, and it was just a lot of nothing. And if these classes hadn't been as good, as rich as a lot of us, I think, believe that they are, this probably would be now a bigger issue than it is. But Keanu Benton came along, and he did impress. In fact, he impressed, as I've been talking about this week, more than what the casual fan can see. The coaches find stuff in Benton's game that they absolutely love and are convinced are going to take him to the next level. That was one factor. But the other undeniable factor was that Leal didn't impress the coaches. They're not going to talk bad about him. But as I often say, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. And they didn't have any use for him. When the team got in trouble with Cam's groin injury, who did they turn to? The correct answer is everybody else. Just now, over this offseason, when they were looking for reinforcements and depth, who did they turn to? Well, again, everybody else. Dean Lowry was picked up as a free agent. He's a classic backup NFL defensive lineman. They retained Montravius Adams. They've retained, at least for now, Isaiah Loudermilk. They drafted, for that matter, in the 6th round, Logan Lee out of Iowa. And Lee doesn't profile to even be a starter, but he can be one of those backups who can get you smarts and dependability and run stopping. He's not going to be a penetrator, somebody who gets to the backfield, but he can do some things. There's a feel about Lee that he too might be able to outperform where he was drafted. But Leal is still there. And this amid uncertainty as to how many defensive linemen you would even keep, given these new special team setups and how that might affect your roster composition. I've mentioned to you guys a couple of times, kind of in passing, but it's still true, that I've seen defensive linemen used in some of these special team setups. So what's the problem? What's gone wrong to date? It could be a sophomore slump. That does happen. Not everybody rises up to meet the standardized Tomlin bar for year 2? He most certainly didn't. And maybe upon seeing some others do that would have gotten a little bit discouraged or deflated. Not getting a helmet affects everybody. That happened to him several times. Or there's also this possibility, and I've heard this from football people that I trust, and that's that the Steelers just kind of whiffed here, meaning not necessarily on the player, but on the fit. It's happened before. Jarvis Jones was a classic case of that. Jarvis shouldn't have been playing the position that he was playing, meaning lining up at edge rusher, for the size that he had. Everybody should have known that. There's other ways you could have cast Jarvis, but not just by lining him up against basic NFL tackles who were going to swallow him whole, and did so. A more positive example was Jason Worlds, who was a second rounder, wasn't used the way he should have been at the start, switched sides, switched approaches, and all of a sudden became an impact player, was getting to the quarterback like it was breathing. In Leal's case, what I'm told is that he'd be a way better fit in a 4-3 where he can be hidden a little bit better. He's much more adept at getting to the backfield than he is in plain old run stopping and all those things that the Steelers value and need out of their 3 down linemen. In which case, maybe they'd be doing everybody a favor, including this kid, by just cutting him in camp. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar.
Today's J1Q comes from Jeff, who says, "Hey, DK, how about a trade with Washington for Terry McLaurin as the wide receiver? He'd make a great player for the Steelers offense. I don't know if you've mentioned him on your show previously, but have a great day from Winnipeg." Jeff knows of my love for Winnipeg, second favorite city in the world. And I know, and I've shared of the love that people in Manitoba have for football. What a football town that is. Everyone thinks of it just for the Jets, but there's a big football audience there, in no small part because the Blue Bombers have been one of the CFL's better teams in recent years. McLaurin is a really good wide receiver. I've mentioned him a couple of times, Jeff, and it's always been just as part of a pack of names. I've never singled him out for anything. He is, for anybody who doesn't follow the Commanders, which I would imagine is most of the planet, so consistent. Just listen to this. These are his last 4 seasons, and he's a 5-year pro. Catches, 87, 77, 77, 79. Yards, 1,118, 1,053, 1,191, 1,002 last year. Touchdowns, 4, 5, 5, 4. And this is, remember, playing for a team that's not exactly rich at the quarterback position. McLaurin is a really good player who arrived in D.C. with high expectations after a terrific career at Ohio State. And yes, of course, he'd be a fine fit in Pittsburgh. He'd be a fine fit in anywhere. She's a good player. But I say that, and I'll point out here that even though his name has come up, including this week, in some reports that the Commanders and 49ers had discussed a trade between themselves that would send McLaurin to San Francisco and Ayuk to D.C., which, by the way, prompted Ayuk to bark on Instagram, aha, and they say that they're not trying to trade me. Who knows whether it's accurate or not, but his reaction was right there for everybody to see. The other very, very significant element in this storyline is that McLaurin has not 1 but 2 years left on his contract with Washington that pays him roughly $15 million a year, and that according to at least one report from someone who covers the Commanders on a regular basis and is informed that there is a 0 chance, that was the exact term that was used by the reporter, a 0 chance of the Commanders trading McLaurin. So that's my answer. Take all that for what it's worth. And I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. And we will do another one of these tomorrow.